I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Sauna Space. I am a huge fan and user of their products and have my own photon light that has helped me heal over the past 6 months. Sauna is something that has gone back generations and is the ultimate rejuvenation for your entire body. I use my photon light for detoxification at the cellular level, but also for aiding with my sleep cycle and my parasympathetic relaxation. I use my photon light in so many ways while I'm meditating, if I need to recover from stress or anxiety, to counterbalance all the work I do in front of my computer all day with the blue light stress on my eyes and body, and for clearing up my skin. What I love about the Sauna Space products is that they are portable. You can connect them to any outlet in your house. And so you might be thinking, I can't have a sauna because I'm in a small apartment in New York City, or I just don't have the space. And with Sauna Space, they've really found the best solution, and there's no special wiring or electrical work needed. My photon light is light and portable, and I love having that flexibility with my space. Our planet has over 100,000 chemicals and probably more that we don't even know about, and it's not enough just to cleanse once in a while. Sauna Space can provide your daily detox, and there are hundreds of studies that now show that sauna therapy is one of the most effective ways to detoxify yourself from the modern living we are accustomed to. Our sun has always been a great source of healing for us. With COVID and really wanting to boost our immune systems, I'm sure some of you have heard about vitamin D and how that can really benefit your overall immune and health. Sauna Space is an accelerated healing, and that incandescent red infrared light is the same type of light used in the Sauna Space lamps, and it most closely mimics the sun and what makes it so healing for our bodies. I have a home in New England, and it gets cold and overcast in the winter, and you can feel that temperature dip coming, which for some people can cause seasonal depression. The Sauna Space lamps can help aid with these depressive states when mimicking the sun and its benefits. In addition to the chemical pollution and toxic heavy metals, we are now being bombarded with a newer toxic element, which is called EMF radiation from our cell phones, towers, Wi-Fi, smart meters, and it's clear that we need an extra layer of protection. Sauna Space is really offering this amazing EMF-free sauna experience and has pioneered this model. Red light therapy is something that I not only have added to my daily ritual, but I highly recommend this for anyone who wants to boost their immune system, is feeling depressed, has low sleep quality or challenges falling asleep, has any skin issues, or any type of anxiety or stress. You can transform your mind-body connection and recharge so you can be at your best when you step into the craziness of each and every day. We cannot recommend Sauna Space enough. And of course, if you're interested, always check with your physician to make sure this is right for you. Head over to Sauna Space and use our discount code BOLD5, BOLD5, all caps. Amber Sears helps soul-powered entrepreneurs build their dream businesses and lifestyles doing what they love. She is deeply dedicated to inspiring, motivating, and empowering women to reclaim their power, share their unique gifts, live on purpose, and play full out in all areas of life. A huge aspect of this process is helping women heal, transform, awaken to, and embody the highest version of themselves now. Amber specializes in designing and leading transformational retreats and teacher training around the globe in conjunction with her online one-to-one business coaching practice. She weaves the tools, strategies, and systems required to rapidly grow your impact and your income within your business. Not only is Amber a beautiful light and soul in this world, we also share a last name. And I don't think we're related, but we'll see on this episode. Without further ado, please welcome Amber Sears to the show.
Welcome to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. Really, really excited about this episode. We have a very, very special guest today, and I'm going to let her do the honor of introducing herself and telling you a little bit more about, who she is, what she does, and, your background and just all the goodness that you bring to the world. So excited to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much. This is so fun. I'm very grateful to be here and happy to share. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm a holistic business coach. So that's what I've transitioned into, but it took me a long journey to get there for sure. But my backstory, my background is very much as a dancer. So I grew up dancing and was a professional dancer for about 8 years outside of college after I got my degree in dance. But along that journey, I definitely acquired a lot of acute and chronic injuries along that dance career. And so that's when I found Pilates and yoga and meditation and myofascial release and all these other techniques that I ended up learning and teaching alongside my dance career. And so that's really what transitioned me into the health and wellness industry, more full throttle. And I went through like holistic health coaching certification and nutrition training and ended up basically creating an online business of my dreams, like where I could teach what I love online. I could teach what I love abroad as well. I ended up doing retreats, ultimately workshops around the world, and ultimately moved to Costa Rica, lived there for about 7 years. And then recently transitioned back to the US about 3 years ago now when I married my husband, JP. But along that journey, I've learned so much about business. And so I ended up having so many people coming to me, like just these other, health and wellness practitioners coming to me saying, "Hey, Amber, how have you built this awesome business? Like, how are you doing retreats every month in Costa Rica? How are you doing teacher training? Because I want to know how you've done this." And so I never intended ever to be a business coach, but it just became, okay, this is what people are asking me for. Let me see if I can put together some structures and systems that I've been using that would be helpful for people. For the vast majority of people, right? Everyone's really different with their business models, but what can I teach and give value? And so that's really been my whole shift over the last couple of years. I started business coaching about 7 years ago now, and now it's really full time. And that's what I help mainly female entrepreneurs in the health and wellness industry shift into an online business model, and also produce retreats and trainings abroad. Those who love to basically produce transformative experiences, because that's my jam. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. And I remember, because I've been kind of semi-stalking you on Instagram. But I remember reading one of your posts a while ago. I think you said you're originally from, you lived in San Francisco, right?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Santa Cruz, California, which is about an hour and a half south of San Francisco. Yeah. And then I moved to San Francisco when I was 18, 19. And that's when everything really opened up for me, because living in Santa Cruz, it's like this little surf town bubble that nobody ever really leaves. It's really idyllic. It's beautiful. Redwoods. It's awesome. And I was craving something so much bigger. I was like, I know I'm meant for more. I'm not just going to be kind of a small town girl. I want to travel the world. I want to immerse in other cultures. And San Francisco really gave me that cultural diversity I was eager for.
Yeah. Where, I moved from originally I was born in Russia, and I came here when I was 4. So I pretty much lived in San Francisco for most of my life. And that's where Jess and I met.
No way. Oh, cool.
Yeah. That's, I was I'm surprised I never ran into you, because you said you were teaching yoga and Pilates, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised I never took a class or something. I'm curious, where did you teach?
Yeah. So I used to teach at Sports Club LA and at Yoga Works, and also at 2 smaller studios, one in the Sunset district out. I'm forgetting the name of it now. It's like a small little like family
I lived
owned.
in the Sunset. I'm
You
curious.
lived in the Sunset. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was right near
Where?
UCSF. I used to teach at UCSF as well.
Oh my
The
God,
reformer and
that's
back care classes. Yeah, I used to teach at both campuses, Mission Bay and the one in the Sunset. So yeah, I remember taking the Muni at like, 10 o'clock at night back downtown because I lived downtown from the Sunset and just like standing out there in the cold. Like I still have these like vivid memories of the cold of San Francisco, the fog.
Or the fog of the Sunset, right? It's always super
Yes.
foggy there.
It is.
That's
sure.
so cool. And where are you guys now? You guys are you moved out of the state, right?
Yeah, so we are in Austin now, Austin, Texas, and we've been here for about 3 years now. We love Austin. Oh my gosh. Really it's the people. The people are so kind, open-hearted, very community-oriented. So one of the things I loved about living in Costa Rica, the culture in Central and South America is very much it's family-oriented, community-oriented. And I loved that. And coming back to the States, I was so resistant to moving back because I was like, oh, like I don't want to experience the US the way I had growing up. I really wanted to have a different experience. And so prioritizing community was huge for me. But luckily, Austinites love community. So we've been able to sink into a community here of amazing entrepreneurs where we hang out every week. We have like really consistent drop-in time with each other, like we did in high school. It feels very reminiscent of growing up that way, that I've not had that in my adulthood. So it's been so special. So yeah, we love Austin for many reasons, but that's probably the big one.
Yeah, I hear a lot of really great things about Austin. We've been talking about possibly moving out of California too.
As like millions are. I mean, I don't know if it's millions, but it seems like there's a mass exodus from California right now.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. But oh my God, there's so much that we want to ask you. I'm like, where do I even dive in? Like you're a holistic business coach. And I'm like wondering, when did you realize like, hey, the way that I'm doing things, just for like the people that listen that are business oriented or that are entrepreneurs, like when you realize like, hey, the way I'm doing things is not sustainable, it's time to like create systems, because you talked about systems. It's time to create systems and do something where, you can basically like have things automated and you're not just doing the same thing over and over again.
Oh my gosh. And for years I was a solo entrepreneur, right? I wore all the hats. I was a bootstrapping, backpacking, digital nomad, I called myself, right? I was trying to build an online business, living in Tech City, where you're comparing yourself to app developers who are making 5 million, in sale after they sell their app. And like, you're just in that tech bubble and I remember at that time, it was like blogging was a thing. That's how I got started in the online world, was blogging and figuring out, well, like, how do I even monetize this? Like, there was so much to learn and know, and it's ever evolving. But for me, it became very clear because I was a type A workaholic perfectionist, working on that, recovering from that, because that wasn't serving me at all. But I think this is the beauty of the entrepreneur journey, is that it is a spiritual journey. It is a self-development journey the entire way through. I mean, through and through. You're forced to face your deepest fears, your deepest insecurities, overcome some really big internal and external challenges along the path. And you fail a lot. And it's a lot of trial and error. And it's a lot of experimentation. And it requires so much self-trust and so much follow through and perseverance. And this is where I feel like I was really born with the passion and the drive of an entrepreneur. When I work with a lot of entrepreneurs now, I can identify and I'm like, ooh, like, as much as I think you want this, you don't have the drive for it. Because what's required as an entrepreneur is that undeniable self-belief that I will make it happen. I will figure a way. Everything is figure outable, right? It's really the belief system that makes or breaks an entrepreneur. And so, but along the way, like, I hit burnout so many times that I was like, either I'm going to throw in the towel and quit, or I'm going to figure out a better way, a way to work smarter versus harder. Because I was really used to being a workhorse. I was a professional dancer. They tell you to jump and you say how high. You're basically a racehorse, right? And so I was used to giving 200%. I was used to working 10, 15, 18-hour days. That was my normal. So if that was my normal, like, how on earth am I going to unlearn this workaholism and unlearn this, let's say, like, stop the pattern of hitting burnout all the time. Right. And so I had to get really smart with my systems, my strategies. I hired business coaches. I brought in a business partner to help me restructure my business at one point and help me just streamline and simplify. Because as I'm sure y'all can relate, when you're a creative entrepreneur, you have 1,000 ideas and you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I can try all these things. And I could, you kind of throw things out on the wall and hope they stick, hope they land. It's a lot of trial and error in the beginning, right? Until you figure out what is your flow. Not only what are you excited about doing, because you might have tried a lot of things that you're like, now that I'm in this, I actually don't like it. I actually don't like doing online coaching, or I don't like running retreats, or whatever it is. But you had to try it to figure out that that wasn't for you, right? So you do a lot of trial and error. You figure out, okay, this really feels soul aligned. This is like where the deepest fulfillment comes from in my path. And also this is where it's sustainable for me. And I can actually make a good income and profit, and I can sustain myself, and I can build my dreams from this. And that's really what my greatest goal in is my work is to help women entrepreneurs land on their soul's purpose and build their business around that, because that's where the greatest fulfillment is. You can have the greatest fulfillment and reward and have the income that's required to support you, build your dreams, have all the things that you want, the lifestyle that you want, but you can have both. But I think the fulfillment piece is often lacking because it's not aligned with what's really going on inside of you. It's like, oh, well, that looks good. Like I can make X amount of dollars doing X, Y, Z online. It's like, cool, but what's going to keep you in it? Because if it's not fulfilling, it's not going to keep you going and motivated and actually driven enough to go through those obstacles and challenges that every entrepreneur faces. So that deep why and that fulfillment is really what I'm after.
Yeah. There was something that you said that is like going to lead me into the next question that I'm like super, super curious about, that I love talking about. And I'm like all for it. You said that, it's business really is a spiritual game more so like than anything. Like you just, and that fact where it's like, you have to consistently recommit to believing in yourself over and over and over again. Cause you're going to get hit with doubt from all angles. Everyone around is just going to be like, are you sure you can do this? Blah, blah, like, are you sure you can do it? And then you're going to start questioning yourself, and you have to constantly come back to that. Like, I believe in myself. I believe in myself. And so I remember like I reached out to you because I was like, okay, you mentioned plant medicine. And I'm like,
yes,
get into that.
Yes.
So tell us.
Yeah. So my journey working with ayahuasca specifically, because my journey's really been with that master plant. And yes, I've dabbled and I've worked with San Pedro and other medicines over the years, but really the one that I'm most aligned with is ayahuasca. And so my journey with that actually began in Costa Rica about 7 years ago, a little bit longer ago than that. But I moved down there to open up a wellness center. And within the first 6 months, I was invited to an ayahuasca ceremony at a local shamanic healing center about 20 minutes from where I was living. And at the time, like I'd heard about ayahuasca. I did some research on it. I was extremely terrified of it. And I knew that it would be potentially like a game changer in my life, but I was very resistant to this idea of it being a drug. And people had labeled it that, and like there's just a lot of negative connotation to plant medicine as a drug. And I was very anti-drug most of my life, like for sure. Very straight edge. And especially at that time, like I was I was raw vegan. I'd been raw vegan for at least like 5 years at that time. I was a really dedicated yogi meditator. Like I was on the spiritual path of enlightenment. Like that was my agenda, right? Was to like expand my consciousness. But I was doing it with all these tools, but they were only getting me so far. Right. And I'd read about ayahuasca and I was like, well, I want to take a substance to like alter my mind, to like have this spiritual experience I'm wanting. Like I can do that through meditation. Right. Little did I know, I was like so naive. Had no idea. Right. Granted, you don't know until you know. Right. So I was doing all this research and finally I was like, my curiosity is stronger than my fear at this point. After doing so much research and talking to a couple people who I really, really respected, who had done many ceremonies and were just basically like touting the power of this medicine as a healing medicine, as a plant medicine, not as a drug. This isn't a drug, Amber. Like you got to drop the wall around that. This is actually a very powerful healing medicine I think will really help you. And I was like, okay. Because some of the smartest people and intelligent entrepreneurs I'd ever met in my life were sharing this information with me. And I remember being like, the clarity that these people have, and I was like, whatever they've done, I want to know what they've done to get to that level of consciousness and clarity. And so I went to my first ceremony and everything changed. It was the most ego-shattering, life-changing experience of my life, my first ceremony. And it rocked my world. It showed me, this medicine shows you, as you all may know, it shows you your shadows. It shows you the things that you are unwilling to look at, unwilling to feel, unwilling to process, in order to basically help you heal, awaken, transform, step into your highest version of yourself. And at the time, I went kicking and screaming. I resisted this first ceremony like my life depended on it. And that's why, I felt it was a very massive ego-shattering experience. What I learned in that process, though, and subsequent ceremonies after that, because I consistently went back every month to sit with the shaman, work with the medicine, because even though the first one really rocked me and it was like, whoa, why am I doing this to myself? I ended up going back because something deep inside of me was like, Amber, you've got a lot of work to do. I realized how much self-hatred I had, how much trauma I had, the things that I wasn't, like the patterns I was playing out in my life, the self-destructive patterns I was playing out, were a direct reflection of these deeper roots that I wasn't willing to work on or look at. And so as all this stuff comes up, I'm like, wow, I have layers and layers of things to work on. And I also feel like a deep connection to this medicine. It feels very bizarre to say that it felt like home for someone that was so anti any mind altering substances of any kind. It was very weird for me to be in that space and be like, this feels like a homecoming. Right. And so I was like, wow, I don't know what this is, but I want to learn more about this. So I would go back and I'd sit once a month with this shaman at this shamanic healing center. And then about I'd say the 15th ceremony was really when I got the message that my work with this medicine is about service. It's no longer about my own healing, which it was and still is about my own healing, but it's also about service and how I can actually use my gifts to help facilitate an experience for people, bring people to this experience so they can actually heal from this medicine. So that's when everything shifted into, how do I create a safe container? How do I integrate people? How do I prepare people for these experiences? Because I was already running retreats every month at my wellness center, but they were all health and wellness focused, yoga, Pilates, meditation, nothing involving plant medicine, of course. But once I had gone through my own healing, was like, whoa, this is like one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, life-changing tool I've ever experienced in my life. How can I share this with people beyond just doing podcasts and talking about it? How can I share this? So I created the Epic Awakening, which was my shamanic yoga retreat that I ran for 6 years. And that retreat became my everything. It was every month I had 10, 15 people come for this retreat, and working with the shamans, of course, that I worked with. So I was not serving medicine. I want to be very clear. I was not serving medicine, nor was that my path. But my path was, I can be the person that prepares, integrates, facilitates the safety of the container, and make sure that everybody's really educated and prepared mentally, emotionally, physically for the journey, so that when they do have this incredible experience, it's the best ever. Versus when you're not prepared and you're not integrated, it can be really, really, really hard. So I was like, so my obsession became around preparation and integration. How do I create the best experience possible so that people will come and do the healing and walk away changed forever? Because ultimately that was my end all mission, was I'm here to help people awaken, transform, and heal. That is my ultimate soul's mission. And if that's my soul's mission, then this is a powerful path to do that. Now, it's not an easy path, as I'm sure if you all have sat with ayahuasca, no, you've not. Okay.
I'm so curious because it's literally just been calling me for a while now. And I'm going to be finishing up breastfeeding soon. And my boyfriend and we've been talking about it. He's like, I really think you should do it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm shit scared. I'm scared, but I'm feeling very called towards it. He wants me to start with some magical mushrooms first. That's one of his favorites. He likes to do a reset every 6 months. I think you guys would love him. He's like, I need to do a trip. This is what he says. He goes, I need to take a trip to the park. He goes into the park and just does his whole trip for a whole day. But he's like, it's one of the best like resets on your mind. It just shows you like all the bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, I've done the other drugs that aren't plant medicine. They're not the good stuff.
Yeah.
But
well, I think that's a great first step, honestly. Like I went working with mushrooms, I think is a great first step. And for those of you listening who are wanting to dabble in plant medicine, psychedelics, and just don't really want to take a giant leap into working with ayahuasca, because let me be clear, it is a whole nother level working with master plants from the Amazon completely. So I'm totally stumbling over this, but psilocybinic mushrooms, let me just like say that again, are a great way to start. And just like feel into that space and start slow, start microdosing and like slowly increase the dose over time, so that you just like, you can get a feel for what that space can feel like. I wish I had done that. I was like, I just went into the freaking deep end, like from absolutely no substances whatsoever to just deep end. And so it rocked me, because I'd never experienced a visual. I'd never experienced what it would feel like to be in that sort of space. So I definitely would recommend starting there.
yeah, we talked about microdose. Because he's like, you know, take some magic mushrooms, and I'm like, I think I want to microdose first. And the thing is, it's not that I have a problem letting go of control, because I think I've just learned with other substances where I'm just like, well, I'm not in control. You know what I mean? I'm seeing things. Okay. Cool. But you know, it's what you said something earlier where you talked about the ego shatter, right? And I'm actually like really curious about like, what was that ego shattering moment? Like, what was it that really got you where you're like, oh,
yeah, well, you know, for me, I still remember it to this day because it was so vivid. I remember being in a space where working with ayahuasca, it is cleaning you mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I was purging a lot. This ceremony, I purged like 7 times, which is a lot. And part of it was the brew that we were drinking had more tobacco in it. It was more of a purgative. So I basically felt extremely out of control. Speaking about control, as a control freak, right? Perfectionist type A, believe me, I was the ultimate control freak. And so much of that was playing out in my self-destructive behaviors in my life, right? So this is why this medicine was so powerful for me, because it forced me to be out of control. I had no way of resisting or fighting this medicine. It's so powerful. So I was literally, you know, running to and from the bathroom, purged 7 times. I remember sitting on the toilet, basically with my eyes open, seeing all dimensions, like looking down between my legs, seeing like thousands of floors below me, and being like, how did I end up here? Right. And my mind is like, you have no way out of this. You are in the middle, eyes closed or eyes open. You are in it. So I felt so overwhelmed. I felt so out of control. I just started crying. And as soon as I started crying, everything shifted. The medicine was like, yes, this is what we've been trying to get you to do for hours now, is cry. Because here's the thing, I was unwilling to cry. Like I was the type that just let things roll off my back. I didn't let myself cry. I didn't let myself process things, be vulnerable. I was always like the tough one with the hard shell that would just like push through and make it happen, right? That was my MO. Yeah. And this medicine taught me the power of my emotions and the power of feeling your emotions. And that was one of the biggest takeaways from that first ceremony. And why I call it ego death is because I literally felt like I was dying and there was no way out except to cry, except to let go and surrender in a way that I had no idea how to do, right? Mentally, you can think all day long, oh, I can let go. I can let go of this and that. When you're in an experience like that, there is nothing you can do but let go, because the more you resist, the stronger it gets. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to become a puddle of mush sitting on the toilet or on the floor here. And ultimately, I ended up getting up and getting out of the bathroom, and it was totally fine. Like, you're totally capable of moving and walking around perfectly fine when you're working with ayahuasca. But at the time, I was so overwhelmed. I come out and I'm crying, but I had this unbelievable release of bliss and euphoria and love that poured through me. And I was like, oh, wow, this is what I've been missing. like this unconditional love for myself, for the universe, for people. Like I was fully washed of all of that fear and anxiety. And it ended up being, the rest of the journey ended up being really beautiful and really magical, and like connection to source energy and the earth. It was beautiful. But it took me getting to this breaking point of like, I have to let go. I have to surrender. So this is one of the greatest lessons this medicine teaches us, is how to let go and surrender, and how to process and feel our emotions. So it was actually trying to get me to cry, to process this fear and anxiety that I'd been holding on to for a very long time. So during that ceremony, I processed like 10 years of emotional baggage related to my lack of self-love, related to all my self-hatred. Because I had, in my early 20s, I dealt with like 5 years of bulimia, really severe bulimia. Still had a lot of the thoughts and stuff, but wasn't playing out the behavior anymore, but just had the mindset that was very obsessive about food and controlling and all that stuff. And basically the medicine showed me like, look, like you hate yourself. And this is why you're playing out all these patterns. You're unwilling to feel your emotions, all the sad emotions. Like I was just like, nope, I can just bypass all those hard emotions, like fear, anger, sadness. Like I can just bypass all that and be, I can affirm myself all day long, repeating mantras. I can meditate. I can like spiritually bypass basically my emotions. And so this was the huge awakening working with medicine, was like, you being unwilling to look at the shadow aspects of self and feel those feelings is going to only exacerbate your suffering and pain. You have to be willing to feel those things, or you can't transcend and evolve and shift and grow and heal. Healing comes from feeling, but we're so good at numbing ourselves, right? We're so good with numbing ourselves and escaping and bypassing. And most of us are doing that our entire lives. And so this medicine just takes you right there. And it's like, you're going to feel this, baby. And I love you. You're going to be fine, but you got to feel this in order to come out the other side a happier, more loving human. And that's really, how I've shifted. I don't even recognize the person that I was back then. I'm a completely different person. Still, I have patterns that play out. Sure. Like everybody, I'm not 100% healed, and I never will be, but that I've made such massive progress in my mental headspace and in my heart space, where I can actually really embody the love that I never received, or the love that I never gave myself. I can actually really own that and embody that now and give that to other people and myself. And that is everything to me.
Love it.
Oh my goodness. What a powerful journey. And I can feel you so deeply. And I feel like I just have to let you know, because we've got so many things in common. I danced ballet for years, and I've been a vegan since 2016, and I've always felt this control thing where I need to control my health. I'm a yoga teacher as well, so I've always had this urge to control athleticism and control what I'm eating, and had that sense of egotism, I guess you want to call it. And then also in leadership, I kind of took that with me and went on my own journey of adversity. And I know that you're a CEO of Epic Self, and you also run your Soul Powered podcast. So as a business woman, and you're helping other women, I can totally feel coming through, even though it's a Zoom call, that you're on this journey to fulfillment. And you mentioned that being one of the biggest things. It's an art to find that fulfillment, and plant-powered medicine is just one way that you can go about that. But I love what you mentioned about just the spiritual awakening, and this quantum healing is what you call it on your website. And it's such a mission to awaken and heal and transform people. So thank you for what you do. It's a blessing and a gift to everyone. And thank you for sharing that vulnerable story with everyone. I think a lot of people out there, even if they don't have that dance background, or even if they haven't faced adversity in the source of the self-love or self-hate, and/or an eating disorder of some sort, like you mentioned, everyone has this internal battle going, no matter what it is. And I appreciate you sharing that. You mentioned trying psilocybin before going to that leap of the Amazonian plants. I'm curious what the differences are there that you've experienced, and why, for people listening, would they want to heed that advice?
Sure.
Just
Great question.
so we talk about safety a little bit here too, because we've talked about ayahuasca on our podcast before. And I just want to make sure people aren't looking at it as, like you mentioned, a drug, but when it's really this opportunity to have some sort of a healing journey. And it's not something that you just want to, go into without doing your research. And so that's where my question's coming from.
Yeah, no, and it's so on point. I'm so glad you're asking it, because unfortunately there's a lot of promotion of this medicine without talking about the importance of respecting the traditions and the safety that's required and the experience level of the shamans that's required. So ayahuasca is not something I recommend you just dabble in. Like, is that something you just like pick up from a friend and say, I'm gonna drink some ayahuasca tonight? That is not what this is about. So what, still working with psilocybin, most people can get their hands on it relatively easy. Obviously it's an illegal drug it's considered an illegal drug here in the US, but it's relatively easy to get your hands on it here in the US. So it's more, let's say, attainable and accessible. And the difference between working with mushrooms and working with a master plant like ayahuasca is that ayahuasca has a massive tradition around it. And I know there are traditions around medicinal mushrooms as well, magical mushrooms as well, in, like, for example, the Native American communities. But the ayahuasca tradition is a 6,000-year-old tradition. And it is deeply entrenched in the wisdom and knowledge of the plants of the Amazon. So there are several master plants that are grown and cultivated in the Amazon that are all worked with in a very strategic way. So the difference is that you're working with the spirit of a plant. So in the ceremonies, you're actually interfacing with the spirit of a plant. So that's why it's called an entheogen, which really like translates into spirit. So unlike the word psychedelic, it's actually an entheogen because it's connecting you to spirit. So what happens in ceremonies is many people see the spirit realm or dimension, whatever you want to call it, and they have access to interface with their ancestors, with plant spirits, with animal spirits. So it's a very different realm than what many people experience with mushrooms. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have a spiritual experience with LSD or mushrooms. I know a lot of people do, myself included. But working with ayahuasca is like stepping into the spirit world. So you're able to do massive healing on your generational lines, meaning you can work with your ancestors and they can actually heal old trauma, wounding that's generations back through you in one of these ceremonies. And so for those of us who are here, this is me, to break generational patterns. I think a lot of us are here right now at this time on earth to break generational patterns. This plant is a very powerful spirit for helping us do that, because she helps us basically connect to that realm and ultimately heal those things so that we don't pass them on to future generations. And that's why this is such a powerful healing modality. Now, the other part of this is that this medicine is working mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it actually is healing you physically as well. And there's been unbelievable research and really incredible testimonials I can share with you from people who've come to my experiences who have had remarkable healing, because oftentimes the physical issues and ailments are related to the emotional root. And so when you can heal the emotional or traumatic root of something energetically, it changes the physical really quickly. So people see, miraculous healing from physical ailments, autoimmune, cancer, like you name it. But it's really the mental, emotional stuff that is so deeply powerful with this. And that's deeply entrenched in the tradition. So the tribes that actually still work with this medicine to this day, have worked with it for thousands of years. They have very specific ways they work with the plants, meaning that they attune with these plants for most of their life. They'd start drinking them at a very young age. Their parents start them drinking medicines like this at as early as like infancy, small amounts. And then they initiate them around 10, 11, 12 with full doses. And then they start working with plants like consistently, right? And they diet these plants. They work with them for most of their life. So the top level curanderos, shamans in these traditions have been working with these plants their entire lives. So they have actually direct relationships with each of these plant spirits, not just ayahuasca. So when you look at that and you put yourself into that culture, it's hard to fathom because it's so different from the Western mind, so different from the Western culture. It's like really hard to understand. You are stepping into a completely different world where they live one foot in those realms, spirit realms and dimensions, and one foot in this realm. And they are able to navigate. That's what shamans do. They're able to navigate all of those realms. And it's like, wow, like so impressive, like mad respect, unbelievable respect. But what they'll say to you is that the plants teach them. So the plants teach them not only that they receive massive downloads of information from source energy about life at large, right? The universe at large, life at large, their personal trauma, their generational trauma, right? So the plant is, ayahuasca is considered a teacher plant and a doctor plant because it's actually healing you, but it's also teaching you. So this is why a lot of people, they'll come out of a ceremony and they'll have this unbelievable insight about like, oh, this is why like this pattern plays out with me and my partner, or like, oh, this is how the universe works. And like, now I have clarity on my purpose. Now I know exactly what I'm going to do in my business. Like all of a sudden this clarity comes because they've been tapped in to universal life force, to like source energy in such a powerful way that they're just like, okay, like I get it now. And now it's time to take action. You know, once the door is open, she opens the door, shows you what you need to know, and then you've got to take action on it. And that's the harder part, right? About all this is that you can have an incredible experience, learn so much from these plants, and then do nothing with it. And you won't change your own life. Like, yes, you'll have a new perspective, which can change your life. But unless you actually daily implement new things to change your life, nothing's going to happen, right? You won't change your habits. So ultimately, that's the integration piece, right? And that's why another part of this layer is not only the tradition that it's entrenched in, that's really required for the safety of the journey as well. So just to get back to that word safety, because working with a very experienced shaman, when you are working in those realms that you don't understand, as a very ego-based Westerner going into these ceremonies, most people have never, ever touched those spaces. And to think that you can navigate them safely without a shaman or a guide that can actually protect you energetically is very, very naive. So we want to work with the most experienced shamans that we can, because they actually, their job is to protect you energetically from what exists in those realms, which is way beyond what you can fathom right now. There are beings and things that exist in all realms, all types of energies that will attach to you and affect you negatively unless you're protected properly. And you won't know that until you go into that space and then go, oh, whoa, like didn't know this existed, right? And so that's their job. That's a huge part of their job. So when you enter those realms without protection and you don't know how to protect yourself, that's when people come back and have really negative experiences. And that's when people end up having more trauma after these ceremonies than before, because they actually go into a space they don't understand and they're overwhelmed and they have trauma.
Yeah, I know several people that have, had different experiences. And like, when you mentioned that you're part of like the process of like, you're teaching people, like, I think one of the explanation that you just gave was one of the best explanations I've heard. I think it's just explanations I've just heard of like, what it is and, what you can kind of expect with your logical, critical thinking mind.
Right.
And just that integration piece. Cause I know people that have done it and they didn't integrate and then they went back to their usual life and then they just went back to their old identity. They saw crazy stuff, but they didn't integrate it, And just, that the stuff that you talk about, like the entities, right? Like this is something that I kind of like ponder on frequently because, I think like people that go and I'm very picky. I'm like, I'm not just going to go work with I'm super picky. Like I'm friends with the shaman. I'm friends with the shaman. He doesn't work with plant medicine, but he's a spirit shaman. Yeah. And he's the real, like, if there's someone that I would, go to, I would go to him because he's like the real deal. It's not just somebody living on Venice Beach that's like, I did ayahuasca and I'm a shaman now, like you see that stuff and you're like, okay, yes. Dude. But I think about people that mess with the spirit world and they do like readings and stuff like that. And I'm just like, you don't know what you're going into when you start like doing that, and you're not really like what you said, like respecting that ancient tradition. You're just kind of messing with it in a way and doing like readings or whatever, tarot readings or like channeling spirits, and you really don't know who you're like, what entities you're attaching to your like energetic body when you're doing that. And then you wonder why you don't feel good. Like I've known people, like I grew up a pretty spiritual person, and my mom was kind of like, oh, there's this, Rita or whatever, and this Russian lady, and I think she was pretty young, and she just ended up, like, I found out that she died, right? And she was one of those people that kind of channeled, and I was like, I feel like you really have to do the work when you decide to go that route.
Yeah.
You really have to do the work and respect it, and like respect your elders in that space, because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
oh my gosh, so well said. Yeah. And that's why, like, I'm very passionate about speaking about safety, and I'm very passionate about, because I've seen what happens when there is no safety. Unfortunately, I've been in ceremonies where people while out, I call it, and it's something you never want to see. And the trauma that comes from that is something you never want to experience. And so from those experiences, I'm like, okay, this is the new standard. Like there is like, and granted, like those are experiences I went into not knowing that the container wasn't safe. Like I was told this shaman was amazing, 4th generational shaman, blah, blah, blah. I get there and I realize, oh my God, this guy does not hold space for his people. Like, and I only knew when I was in it, how unsafe it was. But with that being said, I want to negate that for as many people as humanly possible, in terms of just sharing, like, you do need to be very, very picky, and you need to work with the most experienced people you can find, which means people in the jungle. Yeah. It doesn't mean white gringos who've served ayahuasca for 3 years. It means going to the jungle, working with the indigenous. And because it's about, like you said, the respect of the tradition. And I noticed this because I worked with a lot of different types of shaman in different traditions. Those that are most entrenched in the tradition, that's where the depth is, that's where the safety is, and that's where the true magic is. And so it's like night and day difference. Like when you compare someone who's newer to this work to someone who's lived it their entire life and grew up in the culture, completely different. Why? Because it's their blood, and they're attuned to it. They've worked with these plants for decades. And so they know how to navigate those spaces. They know how to work with you. They know how to help you heal.
I compare that almost to any industry. Would you want your athletic, physical trainer to be somebody who just, started their journey of athleticism, a day prior? You're looking for the expert in every field. And I think you mentioned earlier, you used a business coach to help you with your business. Like in any part of your life, you're going to want to seek out the best of the best to help you. And if you cut costs here or there on a coach or a mentor or plant medicine or in any area of your life, you're going to get what you pay for, I think, in all of those circumstances. It kind of reminds me too, because after I graduated college, it was like 10, 15 years ago at this point, my degree was in international business and Spanish. So I moved to Peru and I lived there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love Peru.
It was one of the most amazing experiences. And I ended up living with different families and hiking and getting really involved in nature. And that was my first time traveling abroad outside the US. And it really, like you mentioned, opened my eyes to this cultural difference of family and the importance of just the importance of the basic human needs. I spent some time at an orphanage. They had no electricity, no running water, no electronics, nothing, like, no cell phones, no cameras, nothing there. And so I was kind of one of those like prudy, no drug type people. The second I get off, I was in Lima for a while and didn't really have any experiences. Lima's kind of a city. And then I go to Cusco. And I get off the plane and there's a little woman standing there and she offers me a cup of tea. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. And I tried, I spoke Spanish, but they don't speak Spanish in Cusco. They speak Quechua. So I had a dictionary. She didn't speak Spanish. So it was one of those things where I was talking to some of my friends that I was traveling with, trying to figure out what this woman was giving us. So it ended up being coca leaves, which is just the coke plant leaf in a tea form. And she wasn't looking for any money or anything, which a lot of times, in Cusco, they want you to pay them to take pictures or give you something. But this was just a little old woman that was greeting us off this plane. And I was like, no, Coke. Sorry. No, I'm good. Like thinking that it was like this crazy drug when it was really this medicine that she was trying to offer because we're at such a high altitude.
Yes.
And I started to get the headache, and I had never been that high up before. And it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, this woman was trying to heal me. And so I ended up taking the tea. I didn't drink it right away because, well, I took it not to be disrespectful, but I wasn't drinking it because I was like, I'm not into drugs, like, not for me. But that was kind of my first experience with plants being more of a medicine rather than the connotation that we put on them in the West, especially with, hemp and like all these other like CBD, all these products that are really kind of minuscule in terms of comparison to the experience that you would have if you did ayahuasca. There's still these forms of medicine. And I wanted to share that experience because I was kind of like, no drugs, but it was really just coca tea and it was fine. And it was going to help my headache. And like you mentioned, these people drink this in infancy. And I know you are kind of going through your own pregnancy journey. So I kind of wanted to shift into, you mentioned healing future generations. You mentioned how you can go through that process with ayahuasca. So I wanted to ask you about your pregnancy. I know Svetlana is interested because she just went through her own experience, had her first child. I'm planning to have children, and also being vegan. So I'm curious, like, how was that experience for you? And then for my own selfish interest in being a vegan and knowing how that experience was for you, I'm curious to hear your journey in pregnancy and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Happy to share. It's taken me a while to get to a place where I wanted to have kids because I actually never wanted to have kids. I thought I'd be single, like no kids most of my life. Like that was my thing until I met my husband. And then it became very clear, like, oh, you're the reason no other relationships worked out. But also you're the one I want to have babies with. And so, but it took me a while to get to a place where I was willing to let go of the idea of, okay, my body's going to change and I need to be okay with that. Okay, my business is going to change and I need to be okay with that. My business has been my baby for over a decade. What am I going to do without it? What am I going to do without this purpose, this like super meaningful purpose that I've been cultivating in order to make space for maybe potentially a whole new purpose, right? Which is being a mother. So it's been a big ego death cycle. I literally talk about pregnancy as a 9-month ayahuasca ceremony because it is massive ego death all the time, right? Where you're constantly faced with, you're forced to surrender, right? As a pregnant woman, all things can happen and you have to be able to flow and adjust and adapt. So first trimester was really intense for me emotionally, actually, much more so emotionally than physically. Physically, I had nausea and all the things, but it wasn't nearly as bad as other women. Other women, I think, experience a lot more, like, and again, every woman's different. So, but I've heard a lot of stories, women like, just purging a lot, being really sick for the first 3 months. I was not purging a lot, nor was I really nauseous. I was nauseous a couple of weeks out of my first trimester, but the emotional roller coaster I was on was like an ayahuasca ceremony where like days I would wake up and just be like, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm literally losing this old Amber. This old former self is just dying inside as I transition into motherhood, but I'm not yet a mother either. So I'm in this like weird gray zone of transition where I don't even know who I am anymore. But I was also like, really, I didn't have the energy or the drive anymore to get up every day and like pursue my business, which was like completely opposite of my typical MO default mode. Like my default mode is I wake up and I'm like, game on, life, let's do this. Like I'm excited, I'm energized. That's my MO. That's how I wake up. But during pregnancy, I went through some of the lowest times, probably the lowest times of my life, where I felt like I was in deep depression. And I felt like for the first time, I can really empathize with what people experience when they're depressed, chronically depressed, or have, because I had no drive to get up out of bed. I was like, like just completely apathetic to life, completely just like, and it took me several weeks to get through that. Like I remember going to my midwife at week 17 and I was supposed to be in my second trimester, like feeling better by week 14. And I was like, so we're in week 17 and I'm still freaking in hell right now. Like I am in it. I am emotional. I'm a basket case. I'm irritable. Everything that tries to touch me, like I'm just so sensitive to sound, light, noise, like don't bug me. Like that was and I just hated who I was. I'm like, I'm such a bitch right now. I literally cannot contain like how irritated I am. Right. And snap at JP, I couldn't control it. It was like being PMS'd for months. Right. So finally get into the second trimester, 17 weeks, things shift. My brain comes back online. It's no longer being hijacked by this baby. And I finally am like, okay, I'm Amber again. Here we go. Like game on, energy, all my energy back. I was feeling really good. Then I get into third trimester and that's where things start to slow down. And I'm like, okay, here come the symptoms again. The heartburn. So just like heartburn, fatigue, feeling uncomfortable, your body's getting bigger. Like just, you have to just, again, surrender and trust the process. Mm-hmm. So the art of surrender and trust that I've learned through all my work with medicine has been unbelievably helpful because I can't even think about it. I'm like, with all this training, I'm still struggling. I can't even imagine, had I never worked with medicine before, had never understood what it meant to surrender, trust, adapt, and flow, and was never forced to figure that out and kind of go through these ego death cycles before, I would be a wreck. Like I would just be like resisting, fighting, pissed off like all the time because I just wouldn't know what to do, you know? So I feel like all of that has prepared me for motherhood. Well, it's prepared me for pregnancy. And I also think it's prepared me for motherhood, though I'm not a mother yet. And I don't know what that feels like yet, but I'm so excited for that because I feel like I have a lot of tools to help me that have helped me along this journey in a huge way. But I'm literally counting down the days. I'm like, baby's coming out. We got 45 days. I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait because it's uncomfortable. Like plain and simple. And I think I just want to be real about my journey. I think a lot of women, they want to pretend like everything's fine. It's fine. Like I got this. I'm perfect. It's fine. It's like, is that really how you feel inside? Because I have a feeling it's been a lot harder than that, you know? And so I want to be real about and transparent about the process because it's not been easy.
Yeah. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, yes. Like literally, I remember being in like my prenatal classes and there was this one woman that was like, the instructor was like, how are you? She's like, I'm great. I'm fine. And they just feel it. Well, the other side to that is you're extremely psychic when you're pregnant, like extremely, everything is just, you're in a completely different dimension. So you just can tell you're like, why? In my mind, I'm like, can you just say you feel like shit? Just admit you don't feel good. Like admit that you're not fine. It's okay. You know?
Right. It's okay to not be okay. Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay. Just admit it. It'll help you. You'll feel better, you know?
Absolutely.
But everything you're saying about pregnancy, it's crazy. It's crazy. I have very similar symptoms to you for my first trimester. I had some nausea, like just those light symptoms, but like literal emotional roller coaster. I feel so bad for my boyfriend. We've been together for a really long time, but I'm just like, man, he smelled bad to me. He like everything he said was wrong.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me. You smell bad. I made him shower like 3 times a day. Like I was like, literally, like, can you just shower? You smell bad.
I love it. That's so funny.
Oh man. But it's funny because you said like it's like a 9-month ayahuasca journey, and it really is. It's like my shaman friend was like, it is a death and rebirth. It's the death of an old identity and it's the birth of the mother, and you are a mother already. This baby is here with you, in you, he's a piece of your heart, that you get to have this connection with for these 9 months. And then he comes out into the world. And for me, the way that I felt when it happened was, I felt it was weird. It was like, I had you all to myself and now everybody else wants to, hold you and be with you. And I felt very, very protective. It was a weird, like mama bear, like claws coming out towards everybody. I experienced like really bad postpartum depression for the first few months. And I think it was mainly because, my birth was a huge, we did a whole podcast episode on it. It was a huge let go and surrender. Like my pregnancy, I was like, it's great, you know, like say like first trimester, and then second I was energized, great. And then third, it was like slow down. But I was like, all right, by like, you know, by the 8.5 month mark, I was like, you can come out whenever you're ready. Like 37 weeks, you can come out. Cause I think, you know, it's time or whatever. And, I mean, but the birth, like I ended up having a C-section. It didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. You know, it was a long labor. As a lot of resistance happening. And so I was very depressed. Like I was so angry. I was like crying and screaming every day. Like, I mean, you have to let it out. Like, it's like, it felt like it was like a purge, you know? And, and I felt like what you said, like, I felt very apathetic. Like it was so hard for me to get out of bed. Like I felt so disconnected from my daughter, like from everybody. Like I just was so defensive with everybody. I thought everybody was disrespecting me, trying to attack me. Like it was like everything was just not, it wasn't clear. You know what I mean? So, and same thing. Like I really empathize now. It's like, I used to be like, well, you know, like you can, happiness is a choice, all this stuff. But like when you're in the trenches of it and like you're deeply in like your pain and suffering, you know, the only way to go through it is to feel it and heal it. Right. So
totally.
You have to feel it and heal it. And I think like what you're doing is like, you like, especially right now, like enjoy, everybody told me this, it's like, enjoy it and enjoy your sleep and like enjoy these moments and like, oh my God, enjoy that first, like when he comes, you know, like those first like 4 or 5 months while you're just like snuggling and cuddling before he starts like crawling and walking and it's crazy and chaotic. It's going to be so amazing. Like when you look back, you're going to be like, holy shit. Oh my God, I did this, you know?
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to the exhale of like the baby coming out, because for me, I'm like, I feel like I'm going to be much more able to manage an infant than I am able to manage him being in my body, because I'm very hyper aware of my body. And I'm like, okay, like I can't even sit up and feel comfortable. Like, but when he's outside my body, it's going to be like, and he might be crying, but at least he's not in my body affecting me in a way where I can't control it, or I can't, you know, I can't escape it, so to speak. Right. So it's like, I'm very excited for that exhale of, okay, he's outside now. Now there's a whole another set of like things to worry about and things to stress about and whatever, but like, and things to surrender about, but at least it's outside of the body.
One of the tips that I'll give you really quick before I forget is like, in those first few weeks, like people gave me gifts or we bought them where it was like button up onesies. It's like, no, just get the zipper, just get the freaking zipper, because we're not going to be buttoning things up. And then postpartum hair regrowth, they talk about postpartum hair loss. I literally look like I have horns like coming out right here when right now it's tamed somehow, but I literally have weird hair just coming out from all angles on my head. And I'm like, what is this?
Oh my gosh. Amber, I want to respect your time, but I do, for my vegan fans out there, I wanted to hear a little bit about your journey with health being pregnant and anything you want to share about your vegan journey, because you mentioned you were a raw vegan for a long time, and that I'm sure that was a process as well.
Totally. Yes. Oh my gosh. Love it. So yeah, I mean, I've been plant-based for 11 years now. I started out about the first like 6 months of my vegan chapter was cooked vegan and just transitioning out of, you know, eating animal products. And I felt so good. And at the time I was dancing professionally. So I really saw this as a peak performance tool. I really went into this lifestyle thinking, I want to be a better dancer. I want to perform better, endure longer, and recover faster. Plant-based diet checks all those boxes, apparently, right? This, as I was doing the research. So I dive into the lifestyle. I feel such a massive shift in my energy levels, my recovery. Like I woke up unsore for the first time in like a decade as a dancer. And I was like, oh, there's something to this, right? So then I wanted to experiment with raw. So I decided to go raw for a month because I'd read so much about it and really wanted to, again, feel the shifts. So I was in this experimental phase. Well, felt so freaking superhuman being raw that I decided to stay raw as long as I could. as long as it wasn't affecting my health in a negative way, I was like, I can do this. I'm super disciplined. I can make the food. I can figure out the recipes. Like, I'll do it. And honestly, it was the easiest transition because I was basically living on like salads, smoothies, cold soups. Like, it was so simple. I wasn't doing elaborate raw dishes. So I did that for 8 years. And the only reason I transitioned out of raw was because I was working with ayahuasca. And when you're working with ayahuasca, you're opening up all these upper chakras and really, you're really connected to other dimensions, and you can become very ungrounded. And raw food is already very ungrounding, especially if you're my constitution. So I ended up eating more cooked foods to ground me after my ceremonies and to like really keep me grounded energetically. So, but I had a lot of things to learn along the way around like B12 and vitamin D and like certain things that everyone's deficient in, not just vegans. But I did a ton of research leading into this lifestyle that really helped me stay on top of that. So I made sure I was eating all my omega-3s and like trying to get all those things in. Now, I can tell you though, like when I was getting ready to conceive, we did a whole 3-month conception plan prior to getting pregnant because we wanted to get our nutrition levels up to like ideal levels for gene expression in the baby. So we did this whole protocol and I did a ton of blood work. Now, I had not done blood work in probably like 7-8 years. What did I find? I was extremely deficient in certain things. I wasn't deficient in B12 because I'd been taking B12, but I was deficient in omega-3s and I was low in iron. And those are very common for vegans. They're very common for women also in general. But what I ended up doing was supplementation to get my levels up in a fast enough way. Because she's like, well, you could eat a ton of omega-3s through chia seeds and flax seeds and all the things. It'll take you months to get there though. It'll take you a year to get your levels back up, or you can take supplements. And I'm a total purist. And I was like, I don't want to take supplements. I just want to get everything from my food. And I was like, well, Amber, like, how long are you going to wait? So I ended up doing supplementation, got my levels back up, was able to conceive, got the green light to conceive. We ended up conceiving in 3 months. So, and during this pregnancy, it's really been, for me, I chose a midwife who's very open to a vegan lifestyle. She loves and supports and has been vegan and vegetarian. So and back in the day, like 10 years ago, this would have been totally different. I would have probably had a doctor or a midwife who wasn't in agreement with my lifestyle. But nowadays, because it's so accepted, it's so well researched, like it's very, very clear that this is a very safe lifestyle to be doing while you're pregnant. So anyway, I just had to make sure that I kept up with my prenatal vitamins, my supplements. And so, especially because during pregnancy, like you're not able to you don't even necessarily want the food that is good for you. So for example, my first trimester, I was like all my soups and salads and smoothies and things I lived on for the last 8 years, I didn't want. And I was like, well, what the hell do I eat then? Because those are the things I love. Those are the things I craved. Salads every day, smoothies. Like I didn't want any of it. I had such strong food aversions to it. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So because you can't control those sorts of things in pregnancy, I just had to flow with like, okay, then I'm going to eat bland pasta and like things that just like feel good, like things that I can keep down and things that'll get me through this. But now in my second and third trimester, my appetite has come back and I'm like, cool, I can eat all the things I love again. But I think in general, preparing yourself well for pregnancy is key. So no matter whether you're paleo, vegan, whatever, like you've got to look at your nutrition levels. You've got to see where you're at because iron deficiency is a big issue in pregnancy. Diabetes is a big issue. And even really healthy people can have gestational diabetes. So I've learned a lot through this process and I've highly recommend you guys read a ton of books on like nutrition during pregnancy because, and also make sure you're taking prenatal vitamins and all the things that are required because your baby's development is definitely dependent on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And,
yeah.
I was curious to see what those results were. I actually have, I'm doing like a full test, like everything at this place called Wellness, which is out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We actually had one of the women come on, Dr. Elizabeth Svetlana. I don't know if you remember her, but she's a functional holistic doctor who kind of was practicing Western medicine as a doctor and then transitioned. So she's got this like really nice mix of experience, but now completely holistic functional medicine. So I'm going through all these tests and I'm just so curious to see some of the deficiencies because I know that they're going to be there. And I think, the omegas is a big thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The B12 for me, I know I need to be taking B12 supplements, but I'm resisting the supplements. So I'm I'm doing it because I'm curious. I want to know, because I want to have children in the next couple of years. And I think it's important, like you mentioned, to have that ecosystem. I'm curious, just in terms of your partner obviously is supportive and very successful. So people probably know who he is. Was there anything that he was doing in his lifestyle that he had to change? Because it looks like you changed supplements and things like that. Was there anything that came out? Because he seems like he's very fit and focused on athleticism and stuff. So I'm just curious.
He is. Oh yeah. So that's the thing is like and this is why I think doing blood work every year minimum is so important. Because just because you think you're getting it through your diet doesn't mean that you are. Just because you're eating the foods doesn't mean you're absorbing the nutrients well. Right. We don't know until we look under the hood what's really happening. So I highly recommend blood work every year. And I wish I had done that because it would have prevented me from getting to this level of deficiency. But with that being said, JP, he's been like more paleo keto most of his life, and he still eats a ton of animal products. And as much as I'm like, babe, maybe that's not the best thing for your heart or whatever, like he's not going to change, and that's fine until he self-realizes and maybe wants to make a change. I don't know. But with that being said, he had certain deficiencies. Testosterone was low, certain things were low. So he was already taking a lot of supplements, but he ended up taking different ones for those 3 months. And they actually, put him on testosterone briefly to basically get his levels up, and they took him off of it before conception because testosterone actually reduces your sperm count. So they wanted him to get his levels up, but then they remove it right before conception so that his sperm count is high. So when he's conceiving, like the opportunity is there. So just like a lot of different things like that. And then he's just basically stuck with that regime through the last year, and he's been feeling great. So again, I think that annual blood work is so powerful.
Let's just have you shout yourself out. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you? How can they find you? Website, where are you most active on social media? And we will send everyone your way.
Yeah, sure. So Epic Self is my main website, and you guys can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, but really my favorite place to connect with people is Instagram. So if you guys want to connect about this, if you have any questions about this podcast, feel free to DM me on Instagram. That's where I do a lot of my conversing, and that's where I'm most accessible, let's say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We definitely need a part 2 journey into motherhood, and good luck and congratulations on being a new mom. We know that you're going to have a lovely journey, another ayahuasca trip in your birth. So
yeah, thank you so much. It's been so fun to connect with you guys, and thank you so much for your time, your energy, and putting this podcast together. I know it takes a lot to make this happen. So thank you for doing the work and showing up and shining bright and sharing this information.
Absolutely.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.